Hello, welcome to the Awakening Report. I'm your host, Doug Hamp. This is a special show. This is not the normal time, but I have a special guest on the line, and I'm so excited to have him. It's Hanoch Young. He is an Israeli tour guide. And if you haven't guessed, there's not a lot of business in tourism right now. So it's unfortunate, but the good news is that we get to have him right here, right now. And we're looking forward to taking your questions for an official Israeli tour guide. So let's welcome him. Hey, Hanoch, great to have you.
Thank you so much, Doug. It's great to be with you, even just a couple of thousand miles away.
Yeah, this is fantastic. So you live in Israel.
Yes.
Where in Israel do you live?
I live in Modi'in, the home of the Maccabees, midway between Jerusalem and Tel Aviv.
Okay, fantastic. Home of the Maccabees. Now, the Maccabees were kind of important people, right? I mean, they had a crisis in their day as well, if I remember. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah. Well, we go back to the time of Alexander the Great. I don't want to, bore everyone with all the details. He dies, his two main generals, one's up in the Syria region, one's in Egypt. Make a long story short, Israel is under the control of the Greeks coming out of Syria, the Syrian Greeks. I know that's kind of a weird expression. People may not be familiar with it.
Right.
But that's where we get the story of Hanukkah.
Uh-huh.
Approximately 165 before the Common Era, BC, the Maccabean revolt. There was tremendous persecution against the Jewish people. And, the thing about Hanukkah, particularly, I think Hanukkah is very misunderstood in Hebrew root circles because it's clearly not one of the biblically mandated festivals.
Mm-hmm.
It's not. And we don't treat it that way.
Right.
It doesn't have that. It's an incredibly minor festival.
Mm-hmm.
It would best be thought of as kind of like a Memorial Day.
Mm-hmm.
But I do want to stress, if the Maccabees, the Hashmonaim, the Hasmoneans had not been victorious,
mm-hmm.
there never would have been a Miriam and her son Yeshua. So from a Hebrew roots perspective, it's really an important day.
Yeah.
Just throwing in a little tidbit.
That's really good. Now, you're an American by birth. You were born and raised in...
You may hear my accent, in the Bronx, in New York City.
Okay, all right.
People say, well, you don't really sound like you're from New York. They expect me to say things like November, tomatoes, I'll take you outside and show you beaten, those kind of things.
Uh-huh. Well, I'm glad that you've been able to adapt. That's really good.
Yes, a little bit.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Now, how hard was it for you to learn Hebrew? Was that pretty tough?
Well, it's interesting. I came knowing some Hebrew. I did not grow up in a religiously observant family.
Uh-huh. I
attended an after-school Hebrew school until I was 13, which basically gives you it's kind of like a Sunday church, Sunday school. Gives you a level of education about a second grader would have. So I had basics. Then when I started going to Israel as a teenager, I began learning more. Now, when I came on Aliyah, when I moved to Israel, I thought I was on a low intermediate level.
Mm-hmm.
And after 3 days, I found that I was like kind of an advanced beginner.
Yeah.
The grammar was far more nuanced than I had realized.
Right, yeah.
And
there's a lot of new words too, right? I mean, there's a lot of new words, there's expressions. It's always evolving.
Yes.
Yeah. I remember when I was at the Hebrew University, this was back between 1997 and 2000, and I was studying modern Hebrew, and I passed the fluency exam, which means that I'm now ready to start learning Hebrew, right? They were having these debates about whether they should continue using the Hebrew alphabet or maybe they should switch to a different alphabet, and there were just different discussions, and there was kind of the Hebrew Academy, if that's what they call it, that kind of makes the decisions about what direction Hebrew
can go. What the word like French academy, legitimate.
Right? Yeah. And, so it was all very interesting, and right now I have to keep practicing. I'm doing Duolingo so I can try to keep up my Hebrew, and it's so frustrating because I'm like, I know I used to know that word, and but it's good.
It's the classic: if you don't use it, you lose it.
That's
You
right.
need to be immersed in a situation.
Yeah.
And when I took the tour guides course, I took it. The school that accepted me in Jerusalem was only offering it in Hebrew for those 2 years. So
Wow.
I wound up taking it all in Hebrew.
Wow, that's great.
But in that era, my Hebrew was better than it is now.
Wow.
Because I was in school with Israelis.
Mm-hmm.
The lectures were all in Hebrew.
Yeah.
The teaching out in the field, the 82 different trips around the country, were all in Hebrew.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a tour guide.
Yeah.
I work in English.
That's right.
I travel to the States and I speak to groups like the wonderful conference that you had invited me to, that the Way sponsored. From what I understand, you're in a different building now, by the way.
That's true. Yes.
I look forward to coming and seeing it as soon as we can get out of quarantine here.
Yeah. Yeah. And the goal, just for those that don't know, the goal is to have Hanoch come, I think, in June. And Pastor Gary was arranging all those things. So I trust him with all that stuff. He's awesome. Yeah.
And, the world has kind of caused a few complications in that plan.
Man. Hasn't it though? I mean, this is really crazy stuff. Yeah. Well, I've got some questions for you.
Please,
I'm going to try to throw a few softballs your way, but I'm also going to challenge you a little bit because you made a comment some years ago. 2 years ago, last year, I guess it was. And you said something about how the Antichrist is something that is completely off the radar for practically any Jew. All right. So I want to just throw something from Ezekiel 38-39.
Okay.
I'm not going to give you a trick question. I won't do that. All right. But I want to pick your brain. Okay. I want to pick your brain and just kind of get your take on it and sort of what is the general Israeli sense about these things. So the first thing, I've entitled this "The Secrets of the Holy Land," and I think there really are a lot of secrets. It's not that they can't be known; it's just that we don't know what they are. And something that really intrigues me are the tunnels underneath Jerusalem. And I understand that you happen to be an expert on that. You've traveled 700 times under those in those tunnels. That's quite amazing.
What's referred to as the Western Wall tunnels.
Yes.
I used to guide there part-time over a period of about 6 years. And in those 6 years, I wound up guiding there over 700 times. Yeah, that's true.
Wow. That's phenomenal. So tell us a little bit about this. I mean, probably a lot of people don't know that there's this huge labyrinth of tunnels underneath the old city of Jerusalem. Tell us how they got there.
Okay.
What's up with those?
First, I'll start with the area of the Western Wall. And because people, when they hear Western Wall tunnels, they describe it as the tunnels that go under the Temple Mount. That is not true. Not true at all. There has never been an excavation under the Temple Mount. The Temple Mount has remained under Muslim control since the year 638, when the Muslims conquered the land of Israel from the Byzantine Christians. The Western Wall tunnels are actually the Herodian era street, 2,000-year-old street that ran right alongside the Western Wall. The only people, now you have to understand, the hardest thing for people when I'm guiding there, or when I've guided there in the past, is explain to people what you're seeing now is not the way it looked 2,000 years ago. 2,000 years ago, you were able to look up and see the sky. The only people that ever built a tunnel there were we Israelis in the 1970s through the 1990s. So it was never a tunnel. Of course, over the years of Muslim occupation, there were homes built above it. And in fact, 700 years ago, the Crusaders had been kicked out of Israel by the time of the 13th century. The Muslims wanted to live next to the Temple Mount on the very same level of the Temple Mount. The interesting element is, you don't see it today, but there's a large valley that runs along the Western Wall. So what they did now in the modern era, if we wanted to live in an area above a valley, what would we do? We'd fill it in and then build on top.
Mm-hmm.
However, what they did, which was fascinating, was they built a series of giant arches.
Mm.
And on top of these arches, they built their homes, their schools, their other buildings.
Mm-hmm.
Before you know it, there's practically nothing left of the Western Wall to be seen. The area of the Western Wall Plaza that we see today was built post-1967, when Israel reunited the capital and reunited all of Jerusalem. It was done over. The plaza was created. That plaza where people pray, men and women, is approximately 57 meters long. Oh, I apologize for the, I don't want to, when I say meters, y'all think yards, okay?
I'm good with meters, man. I like meters.
Yeah. But I don't want to alienate any of our friends that are listening. If you're at the goal line and you go to the 40, make a long story short, 57 meters, 57 yards.
There you go.
However, the entire Western Wall is 488 meters long, which is a half a kilometer, or the size approximately of 5 American football fields.
Okay.
And it's fascinating to see stones that were put there in the Herodian period 2,000 years ago. They're not held together by cement.
Wow.
Each level is set one on top of the other. And there are parts that you see all the way down to street level. And there are others when you're 16 meters, 48 feet above what was the street level of 2,000 years ago. Now, that's the Western Wall tunnels.
Okay.
There are tunnels in Ir David, in the city of David, not connected to this at all. Okay. Those tunnels of what we have now, again, were not tunnels, but was an outdoor walkway. Pilgrims would come from the south, let's say from Beersheba or Hebron, immerse in a mikvah, in a Jewish ritual bath, going up to the temple, which is on, of course, the Temple Mount. Now, that street, as well as a drainage channel that brought water, wastewater, rainwater down from the area of the Temple Mount, has been refurbished and is being opened for people to be able to walk up it. So as of, right now, everything, of course, is closed. But assuming we're talking about a month ago, February.
Yep.
Okay. You could have gone underground 400 meters on an angle all the way up from the bottom of the city of David all the way up to the area of the Western Wall. Now, those aren't the only tunnels. There are others. The issue is, from a tour guide's perspective, I would love if all of these areas that we would be able to go from one to the other. However, they're controlled by different organizations.
Yes.
That cooperate perhaps less than ideally sometimes.
Sure, of course. That's how it goes, right?
Yeah.
I hear you.
In the same way that there's different underground structures at the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, which again, based on Roman Catholic, Eastern and Russian Orthodox and Armenian Orthodox, is the site where Yeshua was crucified and buried. Now, when you see it, it's a massive series of 30 plus chapels, a Crusader era building, because the original one was destroyed by the Persians, by the way, who had invaded Israel.
Yeah.
And people look at it and they're saying, because their understanding based on the reading in the New Testament is that Yeshua was crucified outside of the city limits on a rocky hillside, rocks, shrubs, and dirt. That's absolutely true. That's what it would have been. Whether the site of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre is the site or not is really not a topic that we should necessarily go into. There are those who say it is. The point is,
it's debatable. I understand. Yes, like everything. But I personally don't think it's the place. But for what it's worth, I mean, I don't know. I'll just throw in my personal belief based on study is that Yeshua would have been crucified on Har HaZeitim, the Mount of Olives, looking fascinating
in the western direction.
I have a friend who strongly holds to that position, and it's one of those things I put in my little mental filing cabinet. I'm like, maybe, I don't know, and
We're not going to be able to resolve it.
right.
But anyway,
but that's fascinating that you say that. I mean, I haven't
yeah.
heard anybody else corroborate that idea. But do you think he was directly across the tunnel, or not the tunnel, but the bridge that went across the Kidron Valley?
Okay, quite possibly.
Okay.
Quite possibly. See, in guiding, we have what we refer to as the P scale. Probable. Yeah. Okay. I was in Denver with Doug. Okay. Yeah. Just this summer. That's true.
Yeah.
Possible.
Yeah. Okay.
Did I meet that person from your congregation or not? I don't really recall.
Okay.
Preposterous. We were all doing headstands while we were speaking. No, that didn't happen.
Right.
So it's quite possible. But anyway, I'm guiding inside the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, and I overhear a teenage girl say to her mother, I had no idea that Jesus was crucified indoors. So the important thing, and when we, God willing, have our tour in April of 2021,
yes.
It's important to take your mindset and say it was different 2,000 years ago. Mm-hmm. The world was very different.
Yeah. In fact, we have a question from Ed. Ed wants to go with us on our tour.
Hey, Ed.
If anybody else out there wants to go on our tour, please come. We're going to have all the details.
You've got a lot of time to save now.
What's that?
You've got a whole year to save.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
You're not blowing your money on anything else, right? So Ed asks, were these tunnels present during Jesus' ministry?
The street was present. The street was present. In fact, I can take you to a section which is the actual Herodians Street. Mm-hmm. Now, people who are followers of Yeshua always come to Israel and say, where would Yeshua have walked? Now, they don't mean a general direction, north, south, east, west, 2 kilometers that way. They want a spot. That spot, that street, without a doubt, would have been one of the places Yeshua walked. Why? 2,000 years ago, if you came to Jerusalem, you went to the Beit HaMikdash, the temple. If you went to the Beit HaMikdash, the temple, you walked on that street.
That's
Boom,
right.
drop the microphone. We're done.
There you go. Nice. Yeah, that's very cool. That's very cool. Oh man, it's great stuff.
This is Doug. This is merely an appetizer for when y'all get here.
Yeah.
Now,
well, Gary has a question. He's got a question.
Gary.
I hear a large increase of tours in the area of Sumeria. Can you tell us about that and why it's significant? Is it safe?
Okay. First of all, of course, Gary and everybody, all y'all, what we're talking about is the pre-corona situation and the post-corona situation. Mm-hmm. Because right now there are no tourists, there are no Israelis traveling anywhere. We're limited to, except for the purchase of food and or medicine, we're limited to 100 meters from our homes. 100 meters is the length of an American football field. That's it.
That's crazy. I mean, we at least get to go for walks out here in Denver.
Yeah. Well, listen, what can I tell you? So it's a little difficult. Okay.
Yeah.
Shimron, Sumeria is the biblical backbone of Israel. 96% of the stories related in the Tanakh, in the Hebrew Bible, occurred in Shimron, in Sumeria. Mm-hmm. Now, that's what the former American government and the European Union refers to as the quote-unquote West Bank, which is the wrong terminology. Where that came from, that was the Jordanian occupation between 1948 and 1967. We can talk about that when y'all come to Israel. Mm-hmm. It's very significant because if Israel doesn't have a right to Shimron, to Sumeria, we have no right to the beaches of Tel Aviv. Tel Aviv, and that area of the coast, remember, was controlled by the Plishtim, the Philistines. The tribe of Dan gave up trying to conquer it and went up north. That's why we go to Tel Dan.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, that's right. That their original allotment was not
Yeah.
up north; it was down south.
And they said, like, hey, this is too tough. We're
Yeah,
getting out of Dodge.
yeah. And it's interesting what happened to them because they seem to have just fallen off the map to some degree.
Well, and
Yeah.
that kind of leads us into
Spiritually,
a
spiritually.
general thing.
Yeah.
For those who follow God's will, they seem to wind up doing better.
Mm.
Those who don't, well,
Yes.
but I mean,
right.
again, I'm a tour guide, not a theologian, so we'll
That's
just leave it
fine.
at that.
I understand. But it's interesting when you look at the book of Judges, you have this cycle. Like there's like, I think it's 7 cycles, if I remember correctly. But the people would hang out with God, then they would fall into sin. Then God would send, or allow, however you want to look at that. But then, he would send an enemy to kind of uh, beat them up for a while. Then they'd cry out to God, and God would raise up a judge, and then they'd repent. And then they would do it again, right? I mean, it's the same cycle. And this is what I see with coronavirus. And, to be fair, there's
Oh,
all
I do
kinds of
too.
theories about how it
I
got
do
started
too.
and all that. It doesn't matter. I
It's here.
believe God is using it. It's here, right? It's here.
Here.
People are dying, and it's now our reality, like it or not, whether it's a
Right.
conspiracy or not, it doesn't matter. But I think God allows this stuff to wake us up and to say, hey, guys, I'm still here, and you are pursuing a path that leads to destruction ultimately, and I want to spare you from that. That's what I see happen.
Doug, I would love to tell you you're totally off base. I would love to tell you it's not that big a deal. I mean, I have friends that are still telling me, it's not a big a deal. It's just like the flu. It is a big deal. And the entire world is suffering. And the world's economy has been brought almost to its knees. And we're almost there.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think it's a coincidence that this is occurring right before Passover, I mean, you don't see the similarities.
I know.
And you know where I stand in terms of Judah and Ephraim. To me, the most important thing in my life, 2 things: the reconciliation, restoration of all who consider themselves part of Israel, number 1, and alongside the rebuilding of the Beit HaMikdash, the temple.
Yeah.
So I see this as a giant wake-up call. I don't know if it's the last one we're going to get.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's also a big plague of locusts going around much of the world.
I know. That's astounding. I mean, pestilence and locusts. I'm like, hello, this is this is the thing. Right?
When we turn on the faucet, if that red stuff starts coming out,
yeah.
I look for the frogs. I mean, this is we're living in. Okay, for quite a while in Israel, we have believed that we are living in what we call Atchalta de Geula, the beginning or the footsteps of the redemption.
Mm-hmm.
Now, no one can say, honestly, that we're this close.
Mm-hmm.
We're a heck of a lot closer than we ever were before.
Sure, I agree with that.
And this is a time, like people say to me, Hanoch, how are you doing? You have 0 income. How are you going to afford food?
Right.
What's going to happen?
Yeah.
How long is this going to be? Yeah. And when this is over and everyone gets a vaccine or whatever we're supposed to get, how long will it be before you start working again?
Yeah.
So this is a time of emunah, of faith, and of tshuva, a turning or returning to the state that we're supposed to be.
Yeah.
Now,
could you take a few minutes, because people have heard me talk about Judah and Ephraim. So they've heard it from my perspective as a believer in Yeshua, Messianic, whatever. Okay. And I'm not here to trap you into believing in Jesus or anything like that.
No.
I respect you where you are, but I would love to hear your perspective about that. And then I'd love to hear kind of what is your take on the rebuilding of the temple and the Acharit Yomim, right? The last days, as it were. So, take those in any order you want.
This is so exciting.
Yeah.
This is what I live for. First, I have to tell a little story. April 1994, I see a very small ad in a newspaper, a Jewish newspaper in New York, where I lived at the time. that said some organization called United Israel World Union. It was going to have its annual meeting. They were all about something, the lost tribes of Israel, and one Mosaic faith for the entire world. I had never even heard that term, Mosaic faith, and actually I haven't even heard it since. I go to the meeting, and out of 35 people there, I'm the only Jewish person. And this is April of 1994. I began meeting people there who would say to me, I'm not Jewish, but I think I'm part of Israel. I was stunned. I had never heard of that before, and conceptually, I didn't quite understand it. How can you be part of Israel and not be Jewish? So I did an amazing thing. I went back to the Tanakh, the Hebrew Bible, and I restudied the Nevi'im, the prophets of Israel. And lo and behold, the most prevalent theme of all the prophets is the restoration of all of Israel, Judah and Ephraim. Now we know from the prophet Hosea, that Ephraim the northern kingdom of Israel was destroyed, the so-called 10 lost tribes. However, God never loses anything. They were punished. And Hosea tells us they were not to know their identity. They were to become lo ami, not my people. So we've all known this. Now, people from Jewish communities over history, over the centuries, sent shlichim, emissaries, all over the world looking for the lost tribes. They went to Africa. They went to the Amazon. They went to Australia. They went to the Caucasus Mountains. Well, you know what? Came the end of the era of exploration, we didn't know where Ephraim was. But again, in the 90s, all of a sudden, people, not exclusively Christian, by the way, in America, much of Ephraim seems to be coming back from Christianity, but I personally do not believe that every Christian is necessarily an Ephraimite.
Okay.
If we have time at the end, I'll talk about where they fit into the whole thing. By the way, that's why I use the term y'all all the time. Why? Because I believe that y'all descend from Ephraim, the northern kingdom of Israel, part of Israel. On the other hand, I'm your brother from Judah, the southern kingdom.
Yeah.
So I'm the southern boy here. So I get to say y'all all I want. By the way, that remark may go over in Colorado. It doesn't always fly in Tennessee and Alabama. But anyway, so the prophesied return is, we like to think of hundreds of millions of people around the world. But in reality, we've got to go back and study the Tanakh over again, because the word remnant is used repeatedly.
Yes, that's right.
And a lot, what's the expression? A lot of people are called, but not everyone answers.
When you're called, few are chosen, is what Jesus said. So.
Yeah, and we have to make that choice. We can get that tug in our heart. We can get that divine email saying that we're part of Israel. But whether we act on it or not is our choice. We're given free will.
That's right. That's right.
So now, I'm all about mutual respect. Judah doesn't try to turn Ephraim into Judah. You all love that part. The part that people struggle with is that Ephraim, Israel, Joseph doesn't try to turn Judah into Joseph. So how's this all going to work out?
Right.
One of the hardest concepts, I assume most of the people listening are American. One of the hardest concepts that Americans in particular have is the idea of letting God be God.
Wow, that's an idea.
Hashem, God promises Ezekiel, the two sticks. That our job, Doug, is to bring those two sticks close together. We only become one in his hand.
Yeah, that's right.
He's going to sort it all out for us. We don't have to go. And that's why proselytizing from either side to me is abhorrent. I won't tolerate it. Again, it's all about mutual respect. Now, mutual respect doesn't mean I necessarily agree with you or that you agree with me.
That's right.
Because we respect each other they're like, and you know what? We may find in restoring our family, the family of the children of Israel, that we actually like each other, that we actually have things in common.
That's what a concept.
Like what a concept.
Yeah,
because people are used to, if you fit into my theological box, I know people who've gone to congregations in this movement with a checklist.
That's right.
And they want to sit with you and Gary, and they want to check things off.
Oh, yeah.
What do you feel about the Trinity? What do you feel about this? What do you feel about? And I got to tell you, one thing that y'all can learn from your Jewish brothers and sisters, we're all about disagreement.
That's true.
People say
three opinions, right?
People say to me, Hanoch, you must be horribly persecuted in Israel for your beliefs. Not at all. I'm not on anyone's radar. No one cares.
Right.
We don't have we don't have a doctrinal statement that we need to sign when we go into a synagogue.
Yeah. And Judaism, by and large, is much more focused on there's a fancy term, I can't think of it, orthopraxy versus orthodoxy, right? I had to throw out my my 800 level terms there, but basically, well, I just trying to impress people. I gotta.
It worked.
But basically, that right living over right doctrine.
Very much so.
I think we'd all agree that there's a place for right doctrine, but if your right doctrine doesn't lead to right practice, then what's the point?
When people have to go on Facebook and state to everyone repeatedly how religious they are, that's your warning,
right?
Because what I'd love to do is say, and how much are you doing for the widows and the homeless and the orphans in your community? Stop telling me how long your service was, and stop telling me how late you were staying up at night studying the Bible. What do you know what?
Yeah.
You shouldn't have to tell people, that, gee, I'm a religious person. It should be readily apparent.
Yep. I totally agree with you. Sorry, I'm having some technical issues here, but we have to. It has to be demonstrated in the way we live, not just the statement of faith that we have, right? And I think Christianity, by and large, has made it all about our statement of faith. And if my statement of faith is better than your statement of faith, well, clearly I'm saved and you're going to hell, right? And we don't just do that to the Jews; we do that to everybody, right? And it can be the church down the street. If you don't agree with me on this particular thing, or
you need to be shunned.
Then you're
you need to be shunned. My children can play with your children.
That's right.
We have nothing to. And so what I see with it, we're not even at the stage yet of getting Ephraim and Judah in the same sandbox playing nicely with each other.
Right.
We need to get Ephraim to stop savaging mainstream Christianity. Because people having left that movement will often have a very, very negative view about it, and let alone Ephraim to Ephraim. Again, congregations are just it's not the way to do it.
Right. Yeah. In fact, one of the questions we had a few weeks ago is, why are Messianic Jews, who are not part of the Ephraim idea, why are they so against this idea of Ephraim? What are your thoughts on that?
Okay.
You can be honest.
I'm always honest. To a fault.
Give it to us. Give it to us straight.
Right. It's kind of an alphabet soup of a few different organizations in America. These organizations have a sort of two-tiered view of the world. Being born Jewish or having converted within their system makes you superior to the non-Jewish spouse. Let's say, a husband and wife are members of a Messianic Jewish congregation. The wife is from a quote unquote Gentile background. She's second class. Yep. She's a second class citizen.
Yep.
It's almost like, well, we need somebody to clean up after Oneg. So we've got the Gentiles here.
That's right.
And to me, that's, and it's the idea that the Torah is only for these Jewish people, and their non-Jewish spouses, no matter how much No. It's not for them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I don't get that at all. At all.
Yeah, I hear you. I totally hear you. I attended a very nice congregation in Southern California where, when I went there, people were like, "Are you Jewish?" And I'm like, "Well, no." And you could tell their countenance changed just ever so slightly. It's like, "Oh, bummer. I was hoping you're Jewish because I wanted to
Yeah.
tell you." And I'm like, "Look, I love the Jewish people too, but they're not all that great. I mean, we're all just human at the end of the day, My goodness."
We're I like that. And at the end of the day, we are all human.
Yeah.
By the way, I love, when I'm speaking to groups, and I'll ask, what religion in the Bible does God himself tell us that we need to belong to?
Mm.
So people kind of, squirm a little bit. Some will pander to me and they'll say, Judaism? No.
Yeah, right.
Christianity? No.
No.
A religion is never specified. It's all about a relationship.
That's right.
And that's and in a relationship, my relationship can be slightly different than yours. I'll give you a perfect example from the tefillah, from the Jewish prayers. In the Amidah, in the central prayer that's said 3 times a day, we call upon the God of Abraham, the God of Yitzchak, Isaac, and the God of Yaakov, Jacob.
Right.
So from, why can't we be concise and say God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob? Why is it? And the commentary is each of those 3, the patriarchs, each of them had a slightly different relationship with Avinu Shabashamayim, our Father in heaven.
Oh, that's a great
God of Abraham, he understood and had a relationship slightly different than his son and his grandson. By the way, it always freaks me out when I realize that Jacob was his grandson. Could you imagine, some days, what are we going to do today? Let's go see Grandpa. It's like, oh, okay, Grandpa's Abraham. Okay.
That's a great comment. I love that. That's such a good point, that they all did have a slightly different relationship with God.
As you and I do, as each of us do. Couples, husband and wife, don't have the same relationship. It's all different because we're individuals.
That's right. Yeah.
For better or worse.
And God is God. I mean, he does not change. That's the great thing about God. I'm so happy about that.
You gave the example from Sefer Shoftim, the book of Judges. There's a line in there that describes a time when everyone did what was right in their own eyes. And to me, that's one of the most horrific statements in the entire Tanakh, the entire Hebrew Bible. And we see that in the modern world today. Bible-believing people have this thing about pagans. The pagan world doesn't exist any longer. America, I don't know Americans that are pagans. There are probably a few. But I don't know people that are out there worshiping trees and worshiping their mailboxes or things like that.
There's a few worshiping trees, just so you know. Okay. They're in Northern California.
I was going to say, maybe California. Okay. It's hedonism.
Yeah.
People, and that's why, what's fascinating is we have a tiny country here.
Yeah.
We're only 9 million people. 6,400,000 Jews, 9 million people in our whole country. We're the size of the state of New Jersey. For those familiar with the Republic of Texas, we are 1/28th the size.
Wow.
Of Texas. Okay. We have no shortages of food and no shortages of toilet paper.
Well, that's good because we're out.
Why do I see people going crazy in America?
Yeah.
And now many of them are preppers. So they've got storerooms full of stuff.
Right.
But they're beating people up to get another 144 rolls of toilet paper for a 2-week quarantine. Right. Now, here's the bottom line. If you need 144 rolls of toilet paper for 2 weeks, you already have another medical issue that you should be in a position about.
You're eating too much. That's called gluttony.
Yeah, Something's going on wrong.
Yeah, I think God is going to help us cure our gluttony. Maybe, just maybe. I don't know.
It
Well,
could
I
be.
mean, and part of this is part of the Israeli lifestyle is that you have the shelters that are just part of your fabric of your community, right? And so having to go into a bomb shelter is not something that's foreign. It's not uncommon.
Yeah.
It
You
doesn't
know,
happen every day, but it does happen every couple of years, where
yeah.
that is a reality.
This of course, is the entire world is facing,
Yeah.
is a totally different scenario.
Yeah.
The idea that you can't cluster with your extended family.
Right.
I mean, the guidelines for Pesach, for Passover, are have your seder alone, your seder meal. I mean, this is unprecedented.
Yeah.
The government has ruled that all Batei Knesset, all synagogues in the country, need to be closed. Now, of course, there are some of my countrymen that are still violating that, and they're getting arrested and fined and other things. But they don't realize this is not an ideological battle.
Right.
This is literally a matter of saving someone's life, potentially.
Right. Yeah, it's astounding how quickly the world changed because of coronavirus.
Yeah.
And we had to cancel our Passover dinner. I mean, we were expecting about 175 to 200.
Yeah.
We had a place all set up for it. We were excited, and we were about to sign the dotted line for the hall and everything, and it's all nothing. So
I mean, think of people who plan to get married during this time period.
Yeah, that's a bummer.
It's what we can do is hope that by our actions and by our change of heart, we can receive mercy from Avinu Malkeinu, our Father, our King.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Hey, we got a bunch of questions.
Sure.
Before I get to our people's questions, I've got my own question. Okay, so this is from Ezekiel 38. You know the passage. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen.
Should I jump up and grab the Tanakh?
Well, I actually happen to have one on
here. Thank you.
I come prepared, and so that's the idea.
Okay.
So, again, this isn't a trick question, but as I've been studying Ezekiel 38, 39, I believe, now, not every Christian Bible teacher would agree with me, but I believe that Ezekiel 38, 39 are the exact same scenario and person that we know as the Antichrist, the beast, the little horn, Armageddon, if you will. We're talking about the same person, the same scenario. All right. And I've done some research on this name Gog, and I feel that I've come up with a pretty good thesis as to what this could actually mean. And as you know, or you probably know, that Sumerian, probably the oldest language in the world, has had quite a pretty big influence on Hebrew. There's lots of loan words. The word Heichal, right, temple, actually comes from the Sumerian Egal, which means big house.
Right.
And so there's a lot of those. And so I've traced the word Gog back to the Sumerian Gug, which means enemy or enmity and or hostility. That's the basic.
Okay.
Meaning. So
gotcha.
I believe this is an incredible fit, that the name Gog, we're not looking for somebody named Gog, but we're looking for the enemy. He's the enemy, right? Yeah, he's the enemy. And check this out. I mean, I just taught on this on Shabbat, and it kind of blew my mind as I was putting it together, that in verse 8, he says, speaking of Gog, after many days you will be visited. In the latter years you will come into the land of those brought back from the sword and gathered from many people on the mountains of Israel. Now I'm like, wait a second. The Jews came back, and after 1945, obviously. If the Holocaust was not the sword, I don't know what is. All right. I mean, that was the sword, in my opinion. And they were brought back. They were brought back from many peoples. I mean, they were scattered all over, and they were brought back. And it says to a land that had long been desolate. So you have Nachmanides in the 1200s who went to Israel, and he's like, it was just a complete waste. But that's actually a blessing because our enemies don't even like it. you know?
That's right.
And he says he couldn't even find 9 other Jews to pray with. He could not find a minion.
That's right. That's
All
right. That's very
And-
famous. Yes.
And then in the 870s or something, Mark Twain came, and he's like, yeah, it's just a complete desolate wasteland, you know? So,
Yeah. And innocence abroad. Right.
right. And then
The
there was
1870s.
another thing that there had not been rain for 660,000 days. Now, what I find astounding is that Jesus cursed the fig tree, and I've shown from Scripture that the fig tree is a representation of the house of Israel and the house of Judah, mind you. So you can check those out in the book of Hosea, the book of Joel, and the book of Jeremiah. All right, Jeremiah 23 specifically talks all about it. Okay, the bad figs and the good figs. All right, so the fig tree, he curses this fig tree, which is astounding because he gives this parable saying that there was this landowner who had a fig tree, and he went looking for fruit on it after 3 years, found none, and he said, cut it down. And his head servant said, no, master, let's give it 1 more year. And if we don't find any fruit, then let's cut it down. And he's like, okay, fine. So you have that. Then you have Jesus coming into Jerusalem in the last week of his ministry. He's coming in, and he sees a fig tree, and he sees no fruit on it. So he curses it, and it dries up right away. And then on Matthew 24, he says, learn this parable of the fig tree. Let me just pull that up here on my other screen so everybody can see that. Matthew 24:32. Pretty amazing passage.
This is exciting stuff.
It's totally exciting. I mean, it's
Doug,
blowing my mind.
have you written any of this up?
I have. I'm working on it.
Okay.
It's happening in real time. That's the trouble with prophecy right now. It's all happening in real time. I'm like, all right. So
before we forget, when you finish this, remind me to talk about rain for a second.
Okay, yes, please. So learn this parable from the fig tree. When its branch has already become tender and puts forth leaves, you know that summer is near. So you also, when you see these things, know that it is near and at the doors. Assuredly, I say to you, this generation will by no means pass away till all these things take place. All right. So you got this identification of the fig tree. You have this parable, or this parable that Jesus told about the fig tree. He then curses the fig tree. Now, I want to make this very clear for everybody. When Jesus was speaking to the leadership of Jerusalem, kind of like we say Washington, D.C., right? Washington makes the decisions, but we all suffer the consequences. All right. So the leadership of Jerusalem, not everybody, but the leadership of Jerusalem in Jesus' day rejected him as Messiah. And they said, sorry, you're not Messiah. Whereas lots of people were welcoming. They were saying, Baruch haba b'shem Adonai, right? You had people in the streets. They had palm branches, right?
That's absolutely correct.
Yeah,
right.
They were welcoming him. But the leadership said, no way. All right, so
just one point about the leadership.
Pardon?
Those who were running the temple at the time, that was a paid position.
Yes. Right. Well, and I absolutely agree with you. I completely agree. And so here's what I see. And it looks like you're frozen there, Hanoch. I hope we haven't lost you. So come back if you have lost connection. But what I see is that the leadership of Jerusalem said no. And so the only way, he then gave an ultimatum. He said, you will not see my face again until you say, Baruch haba b'shem Adonai. Are you back? Did I lose you? Okay.
I lost you.
Okay.
Somebody lost somebody.
Well,
okay.
You were frozen, so I kept preaching. Anyway,
okay. What I was just saying was the leadership of the time were all Roman collaborators.
Yes.
These were not the people's leadership. These were those of the Pharisees.
Mm-hmm.
See, when we use the term the Pharisees, that's like saying the Republicans, as if there's no gradation of anything.
Right.
So, yes. Okay. Yes.
I'm on board with you. Okay. I'm not trying to throw the Jews under the bus by any means, but it was leadership. It was, So the leadership said no. And Jesus said in Matthew 23, he said, you will not see my face again until you say, Baruch haba b'shem Adonai, which is, of course, taken from Psalm 118. There's lots of stuff. I don't want to get into all this because that's not the point.
You'll just have to invite me back for another show.
Yeah. Well, so anyway, so back to my main point here. I guess I am a pastor, so I start preaching. But let me take you back to Ezekiel 38.
Right.
So Ezekiel 38 and 39, specifically 38:8 at this point. Let me come back to our split screen. And okay, there we go. Okay, so he says, these people will be gathered on the mountain. So what I'm seeing is that Jesus pronounced this curse. Ezekiel prophesied this curse. And then the people came back from the sword. They came back. But here's what's astounding. And again, I'm not trying to throw the Israelis as a whole under the bus, but I think it does fit for a few people. Anyway, he says, so I will make my holy name known in the midst of my people Israel, and I will not let them profane my holy name anymore. Then the nations shall know that I am the Lord, the Holy One in Israel. All right, so my point here is that while there are many like yourself that believe in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and believe that we should live according to God's word, there are also many who don't. Okay, and in my teaching on Shabbat, I talked about Tel Aviv, that it's the gay capital of the world, and there are many that don't hold to biblical principles. Let's just say it that way. So my point here is that Ezekiel 38 and 39, I think, is being fulfilled in our day. I think that the people have been brought back. They've been brought back. It also talks about, in this same passage, it talks about how when this Gog fellow finally shows up, he's going to come to a land that is secure. All right. So in 38:8, he says, and now all of them dwell safely. Okay. Obviously, this is the word in Hebrew, lavetach. All right. And I'm thinking about the Israeli bitachon. I mean, you've got the Israeli security forces, which is, of course, the police. You got the army, et cetera, and the Air Force, perhaps the best in the world. I mean, Israel is, in my opinion, dwelling securely. They have enemies, but, pardon? No? Okay, share with me your thoughts. Okay.
You've got Iran and its proxies.
Okay.
Lebanon has close to 150,000 missiles pointed at us.
Okay.
You've got Iran funding Hamas and Gaza. We are very, very far from being in a secure situation at all.
Okay.
In fact, before this whole coronavirus thing, there wasn't a period of 2 or 3 weeks that either a former chief of staff, former minister of defense, or former head of the Shin Bet or Mossad, our intelligence agencies, weren't warning about what the next war will bring on the home front when the enemy is able to fire more than 1,000 missiles a day at us from all directions, coming from Syria, coming from Lebanon, and coming from Gaza as well. Okay. So on that sense, that's not the case.
So we basically, you're saying we're not there yet. Okay.
No.
Okay. Were you kind of following as far as the people brought back from the sword?
Right. Now
you're okay.
That, see, the problem of taking any prophecy and putting it into real time is trying to make the puzzle pieces fit. Sometimes it works really well. Sometimes it doesn't, you know. But for instance, having referred to Tel Aviv as the gay capital of the world, no. And I'll tell you why.
Well,
Tel Aviv's only,
that's not my word, just so you know. That was
no.
alltravel.me. So
I've heard it. What I find amusing is that gay parades started in America 25 years before they happened here. So, and I don't believe, being an Israeli for 10 and a half years, I don't believe there's more immorality, quote unquote, however you want to define it, on a per capita basis here than anywhere in America. I mean, I grew up in New York City.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to paint that picture. I'm not trying to say Israel's worse, not at all. I'm just pointing out that it's quite friendly toward that perspective. So, again, I'm not trying to throw Israel under the bus. I love Israel.
You can look to every European
observations here. Well, okay, so that's good to know. I really appreciate your perspective.
Sure.
So
My pleasure.
it's quite possible that we, at least the beginning part of that verse, that we have a people brought back from the sword, the land has been desolate. All of them dwell safely. Maybe that part hasn't been fulfilled yet.
No.
Maybe that's something that,
No, I mean, again, if you look at our southern border, the arson terrorism that's been going on. So yeah, we're not there yet, but certainly there's no doubt that the rebirth of the state of Israel is prophecy in our day.
Yeah.
Fulfillment of biblical prophecy. Absolutely. We could just go the whole list.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. Fascinating. Fascinating. Very cool. But anyway, just kind of getting back to Gog, regardless of whether we're there prophetically or not today. But this person named Gog, which I believe means enemy, enmity, hostility.
Okay.
What do you have any perspective on that? How do you see this playing out in sort of the, and I don't mean give me dates and that kind of stuff. I mean, maybe it happened in 100 years. I don't know. Maybe it's.
Well, I got to tell you.
But what are your thoughts on it?
If you had told me in July when I was sitting with you in Denver that in 6 months the entire world would be on lockdown, there would be nowhere to travel. I couldn't have imagined a scenario like that.
Yeah.
This is like a horror movie come true. So there are a million things that can happen. Iran in the world today is the center of evil. However, Turkey and its leader Erdogan aren't good guys either.
That's true.
Then you've got China. Good old China.
Yep.
Who clearly Wuhan just happens to be the center of their biological warfare. Coincidence? Oh, I don't know.
Yeah.
And then you've got Vladimir Putin and the Russians. So you've got a lot of opportunities.
Yeah.
Now, I also read an interesting commentary the other day. Some rabbi here that was saying that the Gog and Magog is what we're going through right now. Others have said those are, wars and trials and tribulations before. I don't know.
Okay.
I'm just trying to be the best person I can.
I understand.
Try to get the restoration of all of Israel together. Do my little piece of the puzzle.
Yep. Fair enough. Fair enough. Awesome. Well, we've got a ton of questions. I've got to get to these questions because there's so many good ones. Let's see here. This is from D Truth. So D Truth asks, how close are we to seeing a third temple? Not necessarily in years, but as far as progress, let's put it that way.
Okay. I would say we're closer than further. What does that mean? We have more of an awareness of the temple. We have more Jews ascending the Temple Mount than at any time. It's a very, very tender issue. It's a long story, but Israel back in 1967 had given day-to-day control to the Islamic Waqf, the Muslim Religious Council. They don't allow non-Muslims to pray publicly up on the Temple Mount. Jews have been doing it. They've been arrested. Days not arrested. We're getting closer. You've got Machon HaMikdash, the Temple Institute, that has built the utensils that will be used in the third temple. We've got more stuff going on all the time. Of course, the location of the temple. That's where the Dome of the Rock currently sits.
Okay.
What do I think is going to happen? That's one of those things we have to let God be God about.
Smart.
Listen, we sit on the Syrian-African rift.
Yeah.
We have a major earthquake here every 100 years.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a theory going around, which I don't hold to, but there's a theory.
Oh, I know where this is going.
That the temple was not where we think it is,
Okay.
but it was actually in the Old City.
Yeah.
Please address that.
That is
I get tired of having to explain it.
Absolutely bizarre, absurd, and there's not a shred of truth to it. Where it comes from is that, for instance, I've shared with you all the times I've gone to the States 20 times speaking to groups, and they haven't always been as lovely as speaking at the Way. I'll put it to you that way. So when people raise their hand and say, listen, no offense. By the way, I don't know if you know this. That's such a uniquely American expression. You say no offense. It either means I'm about to offend you or I already have. But since I said no offense, when people say to me, listen, no offense, you Jews are wrong about everything all the time. and they quote the verse that says that in the New Testament, that the temple will be destroyed and not a single stone will be left standing on the other.
Mm-hmm.
And they say, how can the Western Wall still be standing? Okay, folks, listen carefully. The Western Wall is not a wall of the Second Temple. The Western Wall is the westernmost outer retaining wall, the box that held up the Temple Mount. It's not a wall of the Second Temple. If you look at the measurements of the temple, there's no way it could fit in the city of David. All of the artifacts relating to the Second Temple have been found around the Temple Mount, on the Temple Mount, not down in the city of David. The water aqueducts, there are 27 huge cisterns still under the Temple Mount. But people want to believe some absurd theory because it really riles people that we Jews have got something right. And it's not just the Jews. Until 1927, even the Muslim sources indicated that was the spot of the Temple of Solomon. Christian sources. But of course, the Hebrew Roots movement, it's less than 30 years old. Some guy has been studying the King James translation for the last 2 years, sitting somewhere in Pocatello, Idaho. He's got it all figured out for us.
That's hilarious.
No offense. No offense.
Oh, yeah, I've met the King James only people, and this one guy called.
You know, really, people tell me, people tell me how my name should be pronounced.
Yeah,
and it's just because the Ruach HaKodesh, the divine, the Holy Spirit, has come to them the night before and given them all the knowledge they need to know.
That's right.
That's okay.
Yeah, one guy he's telling me, how everything else is a derivation from the New King James or for the King James, And I'm like, no, have you studied Hebrew? I don't need to. I got the original.
Hey, listen.
I'm like, okay, whatever.
I think the king was the king. So, there you have it.
Oh, man.
What other questions we have?
Oh, okay. Hold on. I got some goodies in here. Okay, This is from Mark.
Hi, Mark.
Is the Temple Mount the actual real place of the former temple where Yahusha or Yeshua or whatever said there would be one stone upon another? Well, I think you just kind of addressed that.
I just covered that.
Yep. All right. So Mark, there's your answer. And again, Hanoch has been around. He has been to these places, and there's.
I'll take you. I'll show you.
Yeah. Very good. Okay, hold on. I'm getting to more questions. Okay.
The music from Jeopardy now.
Yes. So one person, let's see, I passed over it, sadly. One person was asking.
That's over. That's in another week. Actually, 9 days.
Yes. Let me, hold on. Where'd it go? Oh, bummer. I had it right in front of me. Anyway, he was asking, what are your thoughts about the rebuilding of the temple and the abomination of desolation as spoken of in Daniel the prophet and, of course, Jesus in Matthew 24? What are your thoughts on that?
Okay. There is the Christological concept that the temple will be rebuilt by the anti-Messiah, antichrist, whatever. That's not standard Jewish thought and understanding. We believe that the Beit HaMikdash, the temple, will be rebuilt. It's supposed to be built by people.
Here it is.
There is a very small thread within Jewish scholarship that indicates that the temple is already built in heaven and will descend downward. I think that's absolute nonsense. Should I tell you how I really feel about it? I mean,
yeah, come on, tell me.
For instance, one of the things that the Jewish expectation of Mashiach, of the Messiah, is that if we haven't already built the temple, he will do it. But it's incumbent upon us. It's a mitzvah. It's a commandment for us to do.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me throw a scenario at you. What if?
Sure.
Of course, you have the Temple Institute, right? They're working feverishly to rebuilding it, and I think if they got all the green lights, they would build it. Would you agree with that? I mean, if
they've got blueprints and everything.
Yeah.
Of course, the Dome of the Rock,
sits
on the spot.
Right. Just for argument's sake, let's say that
Behind the
nothing was
possibility.
stopping them.
Sure.
If nothing were stopping
Sure.
them, they would build it. Yes? Okay. So if they could actually build it, what if a guy like Gog, right, from Ezekiel, what if this person that we would call the Antichrist, was kind of took over, he usurped authority in this place? Okay, that's kind of the scenario that a lot of us are seeing, is that
Right.
and I think that the Jews who want to rebuild the temple have really good motives. I think that they're biblically correct, they're kosher, if you will, in their desire to rebuild the temple. I don't think there's anything unbiblical or sinful about rebuilding the temple. But the way I see it is that they will build a biblically kosher temple, and then this really bad person, known as Gog or the Antichrist or whatever, will come, and then he will desecrate that. I think that's the scenario that a lot of us are seeing.
Right.
And
not how I see it, but I hear you. I hear you.
Yep. So anyway, that's just kind of how we're seeing it, and it's kind of what's interesting is it's really a repeat of the Maccabees, right? It's a time of kind of a repeat, right? It's another Hanukkah, right? And so that's kind of how that fits into our.
For Hanukkah, we have amazing donuts, so I have no idea what we're going to get this time around.
That's right. Well, I mean, the short version is, they tried to kill us. We beat them. Let's eat, right? I mean, that's right. So
I've heard that.
I mean, it's not a bad philosophy. It's like, okay, they tried to kill us. We won. Let's eat. So, all right. I'm getting some more questions here. Let's see. Sometimes there's little banter going back and forth, so I'm trying to see who's bantering and who's actually asking. Guys, it's always helpful if you can put the word question in front of it. Okay, this is from Sally. Hey, Sally. She is a member of the Way congregation, so we're glad to have her with us. What are they digging up and or finding in the city of David?
Well, in the area of the city of David, they found the remains of a ritual structure believed to go back to the time of Melchizedek. What's that in English? Melchizedek?
Yes.
Or something like that.
No,
so that was one of the last things. And again, they're working on this, to reopen the entire length of the street, going from the city of David up towards the Temple Mount.
Mm.
So and they find cool stuff there all the time.
Very cool. All right. In rapid succession, this is from Gary. In your opinion, what is the most exciting new excavation in the land?
Wow. Where do I start? There's not as much excavation going on as I would have hoped. A good friend of mine, Professor James Tabor, University of North Carolina, Charlotte, is doing an excavation with Professor Shimon Gibson at Mount Zion. That's the only, other than the city of David, that's the only active excavation going on now. That's really cool. Within the area of the Western Wall tunnels, within the last 2 years, they opened up a section that had not been seen for 1,400 years. To me, that was pretty cool. And it has a little bit of an Odeon, a part of a Roman theater. Now, what's interesting about that is Josephus spoke about a Roman theater in Jerusalem, and we've never found it, at least not before that.
Wow.
Now, when they built the model that used to be at the Holy Land Hotels, now behind the Israel Museum, there is an indication of a Roman theater, but they never found anything on that spot. They just stuck it in there because Josephus said. So whether the one next to the Western Wall is that or not, we don't know. But that's pretty cool stuff.
That's very cool. This is from Gavin. You remember Gavin? He spoke at
hey Gavin.
Last year. Yeah. So
New York
Temple. Sorry.
Gavin had that little bit of a New York accent as well.
Well, he's actually Australian, and
I know.
Yeah. Yeah. Ask Hanoch if the third temple can be rebuilt alongside the dome that is to the north over the dome of the spirits, and
No.
the this could be a compromise arrangement with
Okay.
Islam. Okay.
Two different elements to that. From the
Okay.
Jewish perspective, the Beit HaMikdash, the temple, can only be in one spot, period, end. So
Okay.
that's okay. The Muslims will never compromise. I mean, it's a moot point. I mean, that's like, if you wish upon a star, no. They don't believe, they now, since the 1920s, are saying there never was a Jewish temple. This is what Arafat told Bill Clinton when he was, in the negotiations years ago. Excuse me. So you notice I didn't use my hand. I used my.
I appreciate that. You get extra points from me, and you can't spread it to me. So thank you.
Just a dry throat. No, I'm fine.
No, it's all good. It's all good.
Anything else?
Yeah, I got two more questions, and then
Sure.
we're out of time. All right. So this is from Street. Question: since the prophecy about John the Baptist being Elijah wasn't anything near literal, is it possible that we are expecting way too literal events and possibly miss the things unfolding already? So I don't know if that's necessarily to you. That's maybe to me, but
that's a great question, and it's one of those things where you nod profoundly because we don't know.
That's right.
We don't have the. Okay, on the one hand, we obviously have no hindsight at this point.
Mm-hmm.
We can say, for instance, the rebirth of the state of Israel, the fruits and vegetables that you eat here are nothing less than the fulfillment of biblical prophecy. Israel in 71 years becoming a world leader in biopharmaceuticals and cybersecurity and weapons manufacturing. I mean, yes, we also aren't able to remove ourselves. Had the virus, for instance, stayed in China, for instance, had the Chinese government fessed up at the beginning and not allowed all those people to fly back and forth to Italy and other places, we on the outside could have looked in and said, okay, maybe we could understand something like this. But we're in the middle of it, so no way of telling.
That's right.
No way of knowing.
Yep. All right, and the last question,
last but not least,
D-Truth, which present-day royal houses claim lineage with the House of David?
Okay, not my family. So, I hate to disappoint you. Boy, that could have been a great job, for me down the road, but it is what it is. There are people that have researched that. I've only read a little bit about that. It's something like when the time comes, I think we'll all know this kind of thing. It's like when people say, what tribe are each of us from? We have a Jewish tradition that in the time of Mashiach, the Messiah, he'll tell us, which tribes we're all from. So we'll just be patient.
Yep. And just so people know, people are asking where they can find more about you. kolyehuda.com is Hanoch's website, and it's pronounced Hanoch, not
right?
For all those people out there. Also,
you can reach me through that website. I've just reactivated my blog. Going to do another post tomorrow.
Okay.
Good report from the land. It doesn't go into any political stuff or any of the coronavirus stuff. I'm all over Facebook, all over the social media. Friend me, send a little note, say Doug sent you.
Yeah.
Do you know what? Gary's not here with us in front of us. We could say Gary sent you. So that's fine.
That's right. Yeah. So everyone, please do reach out to him and keep him in your prayers. And tourism is got to be
about my tours. It's, for those of you who like people every once in a while, will reach out and say, you're the only Jewish person that's traveling around the world that accepts Ephraim as who they are. How can we help you?
Yeah.
Your prayers are always appreciated. There's one of those magical donate buttons if you're so inclined. And stay in touch.
Yep. Sounds good. Well, again, Hanoch, thank you so much for being on
my
the show.
pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
And thank you for the secrets of the Holy Land. All right. Take care.
Bye-bye.
All right. God bless.